The Divine Wedding. A few hours after midnight on the 30th of September, 2008, during the new moon, I awoke from a divine dream. My heart was still glowing with the joy and love of what I had just experienced. That wondrous dream began in a very strange way. I found myself gazing down a long, dimly lit stretch of land. Crossing that open field was a sparse crowd of people staggering wearily along. They wore tattered clothes and were a greyish color, as if they were covered in dust, like the survivors of some great battle or natural catastrophe. As I watched them wander ghost-like from left to right across the long field, I got the strong feeling that they were going in the wrong direction. They should be going down the long field instead of across it. I began walking in that direction through the thin crowd, wondering what had happened to these people and where they were going. As I walked between them, they seemed to hardly notice me. Then, ahead of me, I saw a small child sitting on the ground. Her arms were wrapped around her knees and her head was bent over. Everyone else was just ignoring her. Apparently she had given up, or was unable to wander any farther. As I got closer, I saw that she was black, remarkably black, not grey like all the others. She had short, straight, black hair, and I guessed she was about 10 years old. As I stood there, wondering what to do, I heard God's voice whisper inside me, "Bring her home." I didn't know exactly how I was going to do that, but I went up to her and said, "Hello." She didn't respond, so I touched her on the shoulder. She appeared to be unconscious, or in some sort of deep sleep. I reached down and gently picked her up in my arms. She wasn't very heavy and seemed somewhat frail. As I carried her through the crowd, occasionally one of the great people would change direction and start following us, but soon they would get diverted back with the rest of the crowd who were treading across the long field, instead of going down it as we were. Eventually, we got beyond the crowd, and ahead of us I saw a small hill. We climbed to the ridge, and down below, on the other side, I saw a small, crumbling, temple-like structure made of stone. We descended to the rocky ruins and found what appeared to be an altar table, with a few dust-covered, metal relics on it, that somehow seemed vaguely familiar. Off to the left of the altar there was a shaded archway filled with a mysterious black fog. Somehow I knew that was where we were supposed to go. I carried the girl into the dark mist and walked slowly, carefully forward. I couldn't see anything, but the floor was smooth and firm, and I had the impression that we were going down some sort of tunnel. After a short walk, the fog began to thin and we finally came out of it. Before us was a vast crater-like valley, the center of which was filled with the same type of black fog that we had just come through. The whole place was dimly lit, like twilight, and above us the sky was also shrouded in a dim dome of mist. The whole rim of the valley was barren rock. I saw no vegetation whatsoever. As I stood there gazing in wonder, wondering what to do now, someone suddenly came up behind me and put their arms around my neck. I wasn't startled because I knew instantly that it was my angel. She whispered in my mind that I must not see her yet, something about not seeing the bride before the wedding. Then she spread out her feathery wings, partially encircling us. I could see her wingtips on both sides. We suddenly became weightless as she levitated us a few feet above the ground. Then she slowly began floating us counterclockwise around the rim of the rocky crater. I suppose under normal circumstances this whole experience would have been rather unsettling, but there was such a feeling of joy and love swelling in my heart that I felt no fear. As we continued our magic flight around the fog-filled crater, we began to see small groups of angels standing nearby, watching us as we passed. They were all dressed in glowing white garments. Some had wings showing, some didn't. There were males and females, and all were very beautiful and noble looking, like ancient statues of gods and goddesses. Occasionally, One of them would give me a slight nod of friendship or recognition, as one might casually acknowledge a family member passed in a hallway. However, they were mostly interested in the young girl I was carrying. I saw several of them point to her and whisper excitedly to their companions. The farther around the crater we traveled, the greater the divine love that was welling up in my heart. I could sense the girl I was carrying was starting to feel it too. She was slowly awakening and seemed to be calmly accepting what was happening. I knew that God was somewhere beyond the mysterious fog in the crater. His love was pouring through like the living waters of the fountain of youth. But the ultimate vision of him, I understood, was too much for new angels to endure. That was what eternity was for. When we finally finished the loop, my angel lowered us down, and I set the girl on the ground. She was wide awake now, and able to stand on her own, but before either of us could say a word, a glowing white, triangular-shaped object resembling a dove came zooming down from the sky and hovered just above the girl's head. I recognized it immediately as one of the solar alphas. It suddenly dawned on me that my angel must have carried through the little alpha with her from the sun, just as I had carried through the little girl with me from the earth. This must be the moon. Then the body of the alpha opened up like a wide tube, and it descended over the girl. It immediately closed in around her, and completely enveloped every part of her body. I could see it even unwrapping every strand of her hair, lengthening it and turning it golden. Then the alpha transformed itself into a radiant, sparkling gown. And the young girl transformed into an angelically beautiful young lady. Her angel wings spread out from her back, as if they were an airy extension of her gown. She rose from the ground and hovered before me, a vision of loveliness. We gazed into each other's eyes, our hearts united in God's love. Then she smiled and said simply, "I have to go now." "I know," I responded, feeling the irresistible desire in her heart to share God's joyous love with others. Then she gracefully turned, and the foggy sky ahead of her dissolved, revealing a radiant blue vastness and waiting angels. She spread her wings and soared away, into the light. Then I awoke, my heart still brimming with God's love. As a brief epilogue to this experience, the next night, in my dreams, a strange thing happened. Everything I touched began to dissolve. I even picked up a rigid crystal and squeezed it, and it collapsed with a crunch, like sponge taffy, leaving my thumbprint in it. In the days and weeks that followed, in the waking world, I discovered that if I came into contact with other people, I became ill. I assume something of my angel rubbed off on me during our brief contact at the divine wedding. It's a fact that alpha angels, spiritually unwed angels, and omega humans, spiritually unwed humans, cannot safely touch unless they both have the love of God in their hearts. The divine wedding ceremony that I attended, that trinity of man, God, and angel, is the only process that allows humans and angels to gloriously fulfill their common divine destiny, uniting with each other and God, to become a star god. A true child of God, an eternal, radiant star being, in the beautiful, peaceful, blissful, loving paradise of heaven. As a final thought, it has occurred to me that this divine wedding is known in standard Christian terminology as the baptism of the Holy Ghost. About 3 weeks after this experience, while I was reading for the first time the Book of Enoch, translation by R.H. Charles, 1917, I came across this passage, chapter 62, verses 15 and 16. "And the righteous and elect shall have risen from the earth, and ceased to be of downcast countenance. And they shall have been clothed with garments of glory. And these shall be the garments of life from the Lord of spirits. And your garments shall not grow old, nor your glory pass away before the Lord of spirits." The end.